Hello, and welcome to The Essential Reads. My name is Isaac, and my goal is to bring to you a bunch of classic audiobooks in an easy and accessible way. This is the first Friday video that will be a serial. This is one of my favourite books I think I've ever read. I don't fully understand why it touched me in the way that it did, in such sort of a profound way, but the book has sat with me ever since I first read it, and I recently went back through it and realised that this book is probably going to be one that sticks with me for the rest of my life, and I cannot wait to share it with you. If you want to support the show, go to the Patreon, where you will have access to exclusive audiobooks, and it is a direct way to support me. But let's dive in. Let's not faff about too much with this, as I've got a lot of editing to do on the back end, as I'm going to try and soundscape this. The Island of Dr. Moreau by H.G. Wells. A possibility. Foreword. On 1st February 1887, the Lady Vane was lost by collision with a derelict when about latitude 1S and longitude 107W. On 5th January 1888, that is 11 months and 4 days after, my uncle, Edward Prendick, a private gentleman who certainly went aboard the Lady Vane at Callao, and who had been considered drowned, was picked up in latitude 53S and longitude 101W in a small open boat, which the name was illegible, but which is supposed to have belonged to the missing schooner Impecalahua. He gave such a strange account of himself that he was supposed demented. Subsequently, he alleged that his mind was blank from the moment of his escape from the Lady Vane. His case was discussed among psychologists at the time as a curious instance of lapse of memory consequent upon physical and mental stress. The following narrative was found among his papers by the undersigned, his nephew and heir, but unaccompanied by any definite request for publication. The only island known to exist in the region in which my uncle was picked up is Noble's Isle, a small volcanic islet, and uninhabited. It was visited in 1891 by HMS Scorpion. A party of sailors then landed, but found nothing living thereupon except certain curious white moths, some hogs and rabbits, and some rather peculiar rats. No specimen was secured of these, in view of which this narrative is without confirmation in its most essential particular. With that understood, there seems no harm in putting this strange story before the public in accordance, as I believe, with my uncle's intentions. There is at least this much in its behalf. My uncle passed out of human knowledge about latitude 5S and longitude 105 east, and reappeared in the same part of the ocean after a space of 11 months. In some way he must have lived during the interval, and it seems that a schooner called the Impecalahua, with a drunken captain, John Davies, did start from Africa with a puma and certain other animals aboard in January 1887. And that vessel was well known at several ports in the South Pacific, and that it finally disappeared from those seas, with a considerable amount of copra aboard, sailing to its unknown fate from Bryna in December 1887, a date that tallies entirely with my uncle's story. Charles Edward Prendick. Thank you so very much for listening. If you enjoyed, please like, comment, share, all that jazz. And if you really enjoyed, join me on the Patreon. And if you're listening on podcast, leave a review. That is the foreword of this most fantastic book. As you can tell, there are some strange oddities to come. The story mainly follows Edward Prendick, the man who is talked about in the foreword by his nephew, and, as you can tell by the title of the book, a man called Dr. Moreau. I'll see you next week with the next installment. Thank you very much for watching, and until next time, bye-bye.